Hello everybody. Welcome to the OGA Training Network Natural Pest Management webinar 2026 with the brilliant Andy Dibben. Um, just mentioned that we're recording this so that we can share it with other trainees and the world at large. Anyone else who's interested and joins has a look on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to hand over to Andy, who's going to give us a really interesting presentation. Andy is head grower at Abbey Home Farm, for those people who don't know, but I'm sure he'll introduce himself much better than I can. So he's got this really good presentation. If there's any clarification or anything you need on the as we're going along, then either raise your hand or just ask a question. I'm sure he'll be happy to clarify, and I can keep an eye on the chat as well. And then we'll also do a good old questions and thoughts at the end as well. We'll sort of have a good aim to have a good half hour or so chat and try not to just whinge about the drought and the weather, although I'm sure there will be some of that. Cool. Okay, if I hand you over to Andy.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kate. Thanks everyone for coming along. I know wherever you're working, it's been pretty tough day, pretty tough season. So appreciate you making the effort to come along. It's quite nice for me to step out of the brutal irrigation regime and actually share some knowledge and hang out with some other growers, get out of my space a bit. So yeah, so my name's Andy Dibben. I've been in organic veg for 18 years now, and in farming in general for about 25. But all my veg experience, say like 18 years, has always been organic, kind of come from the bottom up. So started as a labourer, came all the way up. I'm head grower here at Abbey Home Farm, been head grower here for 11 years now. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you today. Basically, a little bit of background about the farm. It's a big old organic farm. So it's 1,600 acres, mixed farm. I am head grower of 15 acres of organic veg, which has been going for 27 years. I've been doing it for the last 11. My predecessor, Keith Denning, set it all up. So I had the lovely job of picking up someone else 17 years work of setting up a organic veg operation. But what I'm going to talk to you about today, natural pest management, really, I became really passionate about it. It's a key aspect of being organic, of being a grower. You know, pests are probably much more of a challenge for horticulture than any other sector. But the thing that made me really passionate about the subject and really take it to the next level here on the farm and really enjoy teaching about it is the farm where I work now has been certified organic for 37 years. So no pesticides for 37 years on a big area. And just witnessing, like I said, I came here 11 years ago, witnessing what that does to a farm is frankly mind-blowing and completely inspiring. And what it's allowed me to do, and the way it's allowed me to use natural ecosystems as a tool for pest management, has really inspired me on the subject. And I just love sharing what I've learned and what I've learned to do at the farm with, especially new growers who are trying to learn the skills, and with experienced growers as well. So, without much more ado, I'll crack into it. But this is a big demonstration, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly through this. I'm going to cover a lot of subjects, and I hope that hopefully they're quite digestible. But I will move at a fair rate of knots because it's a bit of storytelling. So it's all flowing one into the other, yeah. But I really it's important you understand this. I'm going to share all the slides with you. I'll share the PowerPoint through Kate to all of you afterwards. We'll do some questions after the session, but please do feel free. Kate will share my email with you. Look at the slides or watch the recording. Those of you who aren't here, watch the recording. Please ask me questions after the event, like through my email. I love sharing knowledge with people. And yeah, I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. Just get ready to absorb. All right, so off we go. So, natural pest management. I mean, a phrase you'll hear a lot is integrated pest management. And it's a phrase that's used a lot in regenerative farming. I consider myself to be a regenerative organic farmer. Okay. And I don't mind saying that. I'm really into being I'm not just about not using pesticides. I'm about going the next level and restoring my landscape into what it used to be and bringing wildlife right back into it. And that goes beyond just not using pesticides. It goes into really enhancing and targeting natural ecosystems as a tool for um, for pest management. So I call it, I don't use any chemicals. There's one that I use, which is slug pellets, which I'll talk about, but not even organic certified pesticides. I don't use any of them. I don't think we need to. Um, so I call it natural pest management, not integrated pest management. Um, these are actually these three definitions here on the screen. These are the UN's definitions of integrated pest management. The one I'm just gonna, I've got to move this so I can read it actually. The one I'm gonna actually read out is the middle one, all right, which sums it up the best. Natural pest management is a philosophy that involves the management of a pest. Instead of controlling or eradicating a pest, it requires a greater knowledge of the pest, the crop, and the environment. Therefore, its strategy focuses on harnessing inherent strengths within ecosystems and directing the pest populations into acceptable bounds rather than towards eliminating them. This strategy avoids undesirable short term and long term ripple effects and will ensure a sustainable future. So basically, we're not looking to get rid of anything. What we want to do is create a balance in nature that allows us to produce food for people, but also provides a really good place for nature to exist. We need to share the land with all the other animals on the planet, but produce food for humans at the same time. And then the bottom one, natural pest management principles apply to cropping areas over an extended spatial and temporal scale rather than to individual crops. So it's a long-term approach. You're not reacting all the time. You're designing a system that will basically, over a long period of time, help you to manage pests really well. So, what is a pest? So, this is Wikipedia. This is just Wikipedia definitions, all right? An annoying, troublesome, or economically damaging animal or plant, and that's insects, weeds, mammals, mollusks, molds, and disease. You'll notice during this presentation, I won't talk about any of the individual ones of those too much. The system you design, if it's a good system you design, should manage all of these to a certain extent in a holistic way. So in conventional farming, the definition of a pest is basically anything in the field that isn't a crop. And I can't emphasize that enough. I do actually do quite a lot of work with big chemical farms, and this is what their fields look like. The only living thing in their fields is basically the cash crop and the humans. There's no other plants and there's no other animals, and it causes them all sorts of problems. And they're all starting to look to organic techniques to deal with it, basically, mainly due to pesticide tolerance. The pesticides available now don't really work, and how whatever they do to them, they don't work. GM crops don't really work. They work for about 2 or 3 years, and the pest out evolves them. So, all these big conventional farms are now moving towards organic techniques. Why is this important? I mean, these two statistics lay out absolutely cold. In the last 50 years, there's been a 70% drop in world wildlife populations. In the last 20 years in the UK, there's been a 60% decline in flying insects. Basically, we've got to ask ourselves, do we want to live in a world that's just tarmac and metal with no living things? Even if we could, the evidence is we couldn't, and that actually most life processes would break down if ecosystems are destroyed. Why has that happened? Excessive use of agrochemicals and habitat destruction. It's obvious that pesticides kill most living life, but habitat destruction, if you look at that picture there, the line down the middle of the screen, basically there's nothing living on the right hand side of that screen. There's loads of stuff living on the left hand side of that screen. That's Brazil, yeah. At least in Brazil, they still have some complex habitats. The UK is way worse than Brazil. We destroyed all of our forests and our woodlands a long, long time ago. We're the most poor country in the whole of Europe for biodiversity. And really, considering farming caused most of the damage, farming is best placed to reverse this damage. And as growers, we have to pick up this baton and commit to repairing this damage and sharing the knowledge created by farming. So if we do really embrace this as organic growers, the benefits we can see from natural pest management are basically huge boost to biodiversity, a massive reduction in the severity of pest infestations, a massive increase in crop quality and yield, and a massive reduction in the carbon footprint of farming. What's not to like? These are the end goals and the end results of a natural pest management system. So these are the key principles of natural pest management. And we're going to look at all of these, some of them more than others, okay? Principle 1, prevention and suppression. Principle 2, monitoring. Principle 3, decisions based on monitoring and damage. Principle 4, intervention options. Principle 5, how to reduce interventions. And principle 6, how to evaluate that whole system, basically, over a long period. For me, this is 100% the most important principle. And if you fully commit to this and you get this right, then you will really see the magic of this principle, basically. Oh, I've just lost my screen. What have I done there? Hang on a minute.
Ooh, we can still see everything.
Yeah, I have. Bear with me a sec.
Hidden
Uh,
zoom.
got it. It's all right. I've got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
well done.
Um, so prevention and suppression, like the most important principle of all. A thriving, diverse ecosystem is a powerful tool to farmers. Um, in order to realize that, you've got to understand that ecosystem and understand what's going in it. So you need to make time to observe your ecosystem. It's very easy as a farmer to charge around looking at the most important jobs to do all day long, normally weeding, planting, watering at the moment. But you've got to make time in your day or in your week. For me, it's in the evenings when I walk my dog to observe that ecosystem and understand how it functions. You need to view the farm as one whole living organism, not as individual little ecosystems. You need to be aware of how it is all interconnected with the landscape around it. So, although we might have hedges around our farm, none of our farms exist in isolation from the landscape around them. And we need to understand how our farms or our fields sit in that wider ecosystem. And perhaps the most important thing, I'm a great believer in the interconnectedness of all things. Nature hates or abhors a vacuum. If you create a vacuum, whether that be by weeding out every single weed other than the cash crop or not allowing any nature to live in your field, nature will come in and fill that vacuum with weeds that you don't want, insects that you don't want, or mammals that you don't want, or fungus that you don't want. You need to find that balance. It's really important. What have I done? I've mucked up my tech here. Okay, hang on.
Don't worry.
I
Yeah.
pressed something with
Okay,
yeah.
so you stop sharing, and then if you get it up on your screen again, this is what happens when growers have three heat waves on the bounce.
Yeah, please
Computers
share
fail.
something. Uh, so
Yeah,
if I go back now, share.
yeah.
You got that?
It's about to, yeah, yeah,
Okay, cool. Back on track. Thanks,
yeah.
Kate.
If I should do some like musical interlude.
Okay, so back. Okay, so really important other principles. So soil health is really important. Habitats are really important. Diversity within your system is really important. Tolerance is really important. And tying all of these things together into, like I said, a holistic whole farm systems approach is really important as well. So if you get your, and I know other people will have done soil health presentations to you, and you'll know quite a lot of this already, but I'm just going to place it in terms of natural pest management. If you get your soil health right, and I think a lot of things about pest management, strong competitive crops are really, really important. That's the starting point. and soil health is the starting point for that. Crops with strong immune systems. So basically, all crops already have defense mechanisms against pests and disease, and we just need to enhance those with a good soil health. We want crops with strong immune systems, symbiotic soil relationships for defense and for supplying good nutrients for those strong competitive crops. Um, and we want a thriving soil ecosystem that will not allow single pests to dominate within that soil ecosystem. And like I said, I see myself as a regenerative organic farmer. These are the four principles of regenerative farming. Okay. So limit the disturbance of your soil. I still plow because I don't want to use Roundup, but I plow as little as possible. I get my ground ready, I cultivate it, and then I then leave it alone for as long as possible and let all the lovely soil life move back in. So preserve structure, maintain fungal networks, and limit carbon release. Keep the soil covered at all times. It's my most precious possession on the farm is my soil. Protect it from soil erosion, constantly adding organic matter all the time, and provide healthy habitats above and below ground. Diversity, and again, we're talking soil health here. So diversity of plant feeds, the diversity of plants feeds a diversity of soil life. Different plants produce different root exudates that feed different kinds of soil life. Crop rotation is a really important tool for managing pests. A lot of the pests are crop family specific. So if you move those crops through time and space all the time, it will disrupt those pest cycles. Um, Diverse cover crop mixes. So again, that'll give you lots of lovely root exudates for your soil life, but it also provides all the different habitats for all the different life, whether it be insects, whether it be beetles. They all love different plants for different reasons. So we want as many different plants as possible in the field at one time. And living roots are absolutely crucial. There's nowhere where there's life on Earth or much life on Earth where there isn't living roots and diverse plants. Deserts, no plants, not much life. Okay. You need loads of plants, loads of diverse plants everywhere to have all that life. Um, Living roots is what creates that symbiosis with soil life. It provides a crucial defense and nutrient role, and balanced and competitive rooting diversity prevents problem weeds from taking over. If you have bare soil and you maintain bare soil other than your cash crop, you just end up with docks, cooch, and thistles. They're colonizing species. If you have loads of other plants underneath and around your crops, they will stop those colonizing weeds from moving in. Okay, so habitat. You want to focus on habitat building, not individual species. So that's that holistic approach. Diverse habitat is really important. We're going to look at this in more detail. So perennial habitat, annual habitat, managed habitat, unmanaged habitat, and wildlife corridors. You want to think in 3 dimensions. You need to bring habitats right in amongst your cropping areas. Crops themselves need to be viewed as habitats, and habitats need to support all stages of life cycles for 12 months of the year. Again, we'll talk about all that in a bit more detail now. So we focus on habitat building, not individual species, because if you understand food webs, okay, if you get the bottom of the food web right, and then for us as growers, really, there's two things of ways of looking at that. Really, we're talking about plants, but if you get your plants right, what that sorts out is your insect populations. And if you get your insect populations right, that feeds everything all the way up through that food web, right up to key predators like foxes, birds of prey. But I never think about those predators. I just think about plants all the time. If you get your plants right, the insects will follow, and all the other predators up the chain will follow after that. So we have diverse perennial habitats, and these are the key ones for me. And again, lots of people don't think about an undisturbed soil as being a key perennial habitat. There's so many things, especially insects. A key part of their life cycle is underground. So whether that's pupating, whether that's feeding in the larval stage, and even if you're not running a no-dig market garden, there will be areas all around your cropping areas where you never cultivate, and you need to value that undisturbed soil as a really important habitat. Trees, especially woodlands, are absolutely crucial. This is where so much of the wildlife goes in the winter to get away from the weather, the cold, the wind, the rain, all of it. That is the deep, complex habitats where everything retreats to when the weather gets bad. Flowers and grasses, they support totally different kinds of life, especially when we're talking about insects. Grasses play a really important role for beetles. Flowers play a really, really important role for predatory insects. And then wetlands are really, they're super complex. So lots and lots of insects rely on wetlands to complete their life cycles. We then also got to think about amphibians. So whether it be newts, whether it be frogs, whether it be toads, whether it be dragonflies, these are all absolutely key predators that rely on wetlands. Diverse annual habitats. So these are ones that aren't there the whole time, but they play just as an important role. So, like I keep saying, crops, your crops are an absolute, you need them to be a habitat and celebrate them as being a habitat. You need life living in and amongst your crops all year round. Like I said, undisturbed soil, crucial perennial habitat. Disturbed soil that is disturbed momentarily and then left to just settle down and become a temporary habitat is just as important. Life recolonizes cultivated soil incredibly quickly. The evidence on how quickly worms move back into a ploughed field is pretty powerful. And I think with modern regen farming, there's a lot of myth talked about that. There's a power in undisturbed soil, but we don't celebrate enough how quickly life can recolonize disturbed soil. Cover crops. We do cover crops everywhere all year round on the farm, and they're just a humming home to all kinds of wildlife, whether it be insects on the flowers, beetles underneath, whether it be foxes in the middle of them, when they're nice and tall in the spring. But yeah, you walk through a thick cover crop, there's all kind of life in it. And then seasonal wetlands. It's amazing on the farm. We have a lot of seasonal wetland that's there in the winter and early spring, and by now it's just completely bone dry. But it's amazing how much frog spawn goes through its life cycle in our seasonal wetlands. Unmanaged habitats. This is a bit like me talking about trees and woodlands. This is where the magic happens. This is where essentially it's all little temporary areas of rewilding is how you should see it. And that's like your woodlands, but also like unmanaged farm buffer zones. So hedges, they can be managed, but your buffer zones, if you just leave them, that is the real kind of building ground for complex ecosystems. And from there, never disturbed, that's where we can entice all the predators out into our fields with different techniques. So then we move into managed habitats. So these are habitats that nature wouldn't provide, that us as humans provide at key times of year. So on the farm, we do all of this stuff. So annual wildflower strips right in the middle of our crops. We have a lot of agroforestry on the farm, and again, this is human created habitat and managed habitat. Like I said, we do a lot of cover crops. We also have beyond the veg areas a lot of wildflower meadows. But nature doesn't stay in one place. It moves across the landscape. We've just got to provide the network for it to do that. And this is how we do that. This is the really important bit about enhancing and targeting powerful natural populations. So, top left, hedgerows. We're really lucky in the UK to have loads and loads of hedgerows. And I like to look at that photo in the top left and like, if I want foxes on my farm to eat rabbits, which they do a lot, the farm manager who has chickens hates foxes. I love foxes. They eat pigeons, they eat rabbits. So I want foxes in my cropping areas. If you look at the woodlands, like right towards the back of that photo, the way those foxes get across the landscape is they come along through the hedgerows. The way a lot of the predatory birds move across the landscapes, they follow the hedgerows where the insects are. The way lots of hedgehogs move across the landscapes, they follow the hedgerows. These are the way we can entice predators from off farm towards our farm and then around our farm. And hopefully they eventually find our veg fields on that farm. Once they get to the hedgerows around our fields, we can then use techniques like beetle banks, annual wildflower strips, bottom left, and agroforestry to bring all of those predators, small and large, from the edges of our fields into the middle of our fields where our crops are. Key bit of maths: the effective range of a predatory insect from a complex habitat is 50 meters. So you need to have complex perennial habitats or annual habitats every 50 meters across your field. And that's how we plan out our cropping areas. And we really do, we see full coverage across all our fields from really powerful predatory populations. We need to think in 3D. Uh, Veg farming can be a very two-dimensional activity. It's all just along the ground. Okay. Like I said, soil health's really, really important. We need to think about underground. That's where loads of predatory insects complete the dormant and larval stages of their life cycles. We need to think at ground level, where we're always thinking, but this is where all the beetles go about doing their business. Beetles are an absolutely, was it? I think it's 1 in 4 identified species in the world is a beetle. So there's a lot of beetles. In the UK, I think 50% of beetles eat slugs and slug eggs. So we really need the beetles are our friends. We want beetles, and they exist at ground level. So we need to be thinking about our habitat at ground level. We need to think about plant level. So there we're talking about predatory insects really, and we need to have loads of predatory insects, which in short involves providing loads of pollen for predatory insects. I'll talk about that in a bit. Um, we also need to think about above our crops. Birds are a really, really important predator. A little interesting fact on that is a nest of blue tits just before fledging. An average blue tit's nest will have 10 chicks in it. One chick just before fledging will eat 100 caterpillars in a day. So that means a nest of 10 chicks will consume 1,000 caterpillars in a day. Around a big field, you've got to have 20, 30 blue tit nests. That's a lot of cabbage white caterpillars being eaten. So we need to celebrate the birds and bring them in amongst our cropping. They play a really, really important role. Yeah, and like that fact of bringing habitats right in amongst the cropping areas. I've talked about wildlife corridors. Um, Allowing your cash crops to flower after you've finished harvesting. Like, so that photo is inside. So that's over winter. That's my rocket crop from the winter and my oriental brassicas. That's mustard there. Or I think it's Mizuna actually by the looks of things, which we leave in the glass house for an extra 2 or 3 weeks after it starts flowering. We build that into the crop plan, and that is humming in hoverflies really early in the year. And that brings us really early defense against aphids in our glass house right at the beginning of the year. But you've got to use it like a tool. You've got a crop plan to do that stuff. Allow it to go to flower, and it does a really important job. We undersow a lot of our crops. That does loads and loads of things around soil erosion and soil fertility. But in terms of natural pest management, if you undersow your crops, that is the ultimate beetle habitat. Beetles don't like running across bare ground. They get eaten by birds if they do that. If you undersow your crops, then basically beetles have cover at ground level and they can go about, they eat loads of weed seeds, but in this context, they eat all your slugs. They even climb plants and eat aphids. So that's a really good way of enhancing your beetle populations. Um, and I'm a bit, I'm about to say I'm a big fan of weeds. A weed in the right place at the right time is just as good as undersowing a crop with a deliberate undersowing mix. Um, our general rule is keep cash crops weed free for the first 8 weeks and then let nature move back in. And again, it does the same role. It provides pollen source for flying insects, but it provides that crucial ground cover for beetles. And this thing about must see the crop as a habitat, okay? And for me, there's a key thing there. I mentioned about rocket and mustards, allowing them to grow on beyond their harvesting stage and flower to feed the insects. And I always use this slide. I think it's a really interesting demonstration. You got that's my sweet corn crop. And what you can see there is an adult ladybird, but you can also see an adult larvae pupating into an adult ladybird. After we finish cropping sweet corn, we leave that sweet corn crop there into October, November. What we see is that the sweet corn gets absolutely covered in aphids. Then what we see is unbelievable amounts of ladybirds move into the sweet corn crop, and they go through quite often two life cycles. So we'll see adults move in, eat loads of aphids, lay eggs, their larvae come out, eat loads of aphids, pupate into adults. So we'll have two generations of adults. And then when the winter really kicks in, these ladybirds then all go off. We've basically tripled or quadrupled the ladybird population by allowing that crop to stay there and get covered in aphids. So it's seeing it's not just a cash crop, it's a habitat, and it's so important to understand that. So these habitats must support all stages of the life cycles. Okay. Basically, a lot of flying insects, flying predators, lacewing adults, um, hoverfly adults, and to a certain extent, ladybird adults don't eat many aphids. Ladybird adults do eat some aphids, but if they can't eat aphids, they eat pollen. Lacewing adults eat pollen, not aphids. Hoverfly adults eat pollen, not aphids. So providing pollen as often as possible is really, really important. And that's a big site. It's very easy to think about the summer as being the most important time for pest management because that's when we have most of our crops. But we have to imagine where these things complete their life cycles and where they spend the winter. So I talked about the sweet corn. A big one for us is all the way through the winter. What we see is often like our Savoy cabbage crop early in the autumn will have a lot of aphids on it. Hoverfly will move in. The larvae will eat all the aphids and clean it out completely. But that bottom left photo there, that is a hoverfly pupa. So the larvae eat all the aphids. They then go into pupa stage. And as we harvest Savoy all the way through the winter, the leaves are covered in hoverfly pupa. That's where they overwinter. So actually, even long after I've harvested the Savoy cabbage, that plant and the leaves that are still on that plant that I didn't harvest with the cabbage are a really, really important habitat. Top right, that's perennial wild flower strips. It doesn't look very flashy. There's not a lot of pollen there, but that is so important. If we snap open lots of those dried stems, we find all kinds of pupa inside them. And that those are through the middle of our cropping areas. And that is where all the predators overwinter. And what we're finding is, same with agroforestry, when I prune apple trees, they're covered in adult ladybirds. So what we're finding is our wildlife corridors, if we manage them correctly across the middle of the field, is stopping all the predators going back to the woodland, you know, 50, 100, 200 meters away on the edge of the field. And we're keeping all these complex predator populations right in the middle of the field. So when we get to spring and they metamorphosize and come out as adults again, they're already right in the middle of the field. And that's really, really important. Diversity is crucial for all life. It's really important for humans, but in terms of crop, um, and we're all pretty good at this already. Like as market gardeners and organic growers, we don't tend to grow monocrops, but diversity of crops is really important in the same field. If I just have a field of cabbages, basically, if a cabbage white butterfly turns up in that field, it's going to have a field day. The only plant it can land on is its favorite food source. If you have a whole load of different crop families in the same field, it will take quite a while for that cabbage white to find its food source. Same with fungus, same with soil-borne pests and disease. Diversity of crops. If you can intercrop them, that's amazing. But bottom left, if you can't, crop rotation is the best way of dealing with that. Like I said, most of the pest species, most of the fungus, most of the insect pests we get are crop family specific. So if we move those crop families every year, it will disrupt all of those pests and diseases. And I keep saying it again, diversity of plants everywhere. So whether it be in your wildlife corridors, whether it be in your undersowing mix, whether it be having a really diverse weed seed population, whether it be diverse crop species, the more different kinds of plants you can get, the more you're feeding the bottom of that food web and the more complex ecosystems you'll have to target and protect your crops. And it's something that I'd like to do a lot more here on the farm, but we don't. We do all of our fertility management with cover crops. I'd love to graze them with livestock. I think large herbivores are an absolutely crucial part of ecosystems. And actually, we don't have any in our rotations. And it's something I'd really like to work into our rotations. It really helps rest the land and build up that soil health and soil nutrients. Even if you are rotating, if you can have a bit of a period where you're not even growing cover crops, you just got pasture, it just brings in loads of insects that a veg system doesn't have. Like I said, it's not something I do, but I'd like to do it on the farm. Again, like diversity, tolerance, critical skill for human beings, but it's a really important skill as growers as well. And I said it at the beginning with our definition of natural pest management. Um, we are not looking to have no pests in the field. If you have no pests in the field, there's absolutely no reason. Well, predators just won't be there. They need those pests as a food source. So if you don't have any pests in the field, i.e., if you use insecticides, even if they are allowed within organic, if you use them and you wipe out all the aphids, there's no reason for aphid predators to be in that field. There's no food source. So we need to have tolerance and allow low levels of pests in our fields. If there are no slugs in your field because you overuse slug pellets, there will be no beetles in your field. So essentially, you become addicted to that intervention that you use, and you'll have to keep using it because you don't have any predators. If you have no small mammals in your field, there will be no birds of prey that feed on them. The owls will not fly across your fields, the kestrels will not hover over your fields. You need to have low levels of pests in the field. So same with caterpillars. No caterpillars in the field, no songbirds in the field, no parasitoid wasps in the field. It's all about striking a balance where we get a little bit of damage, but not a commercial amount of damage. It's absolutely crucial. All of that stuff I've just talked about, you don't apply it to like little bits or just your veg cropping areas or just certain fields. On the farm, we apply it to everywhere. It's just as a powerful approach in protected cropping, which is the top. In fact, there's three of those photos. Um, when we put a glass house up here in 2020, the first thing we planted was perennial wildflower strips. That's how much we value natural pest management. We didn't put a cash crop in first. We put in wildflower strips, perennial in the glass house. The reason we do that is we get very early aphid pressure in the protected cropping. If we, I was always taught to attract predators in from outside into protected cropping. Problem is, if you get aphids in March, none of the predators outside are awake or have completed their life cycles and metamorphosized. So what we need to do is get them over to overwinter inside the protected cropping, which is what we now have. And because it's warmer, they all wake up, metamorphosize, and emerge much earlier, like a month and a half before outside, which is the same time as how much early the aphids are inside. So that's really understanding that. In many ways, it's almost more powerful in the protected cropping is outside. Um, but yeah, we apply this everywhere. The whole of our cropping areas, around our cropping areas, everything we just talked about, we apply it across the whole farm. Like I said, it's not individual areas, it's the whole farm ecosystem that we apply the philosophy to. Okay, so that's prevention and suppression. That, like I said, I spent at least half the presentation on that because it's the most important bit. Okay. Now we need to like monitor how that system is working, and occasionally we have to make interventions. Okay, so we're going to go through the monitoring bit now. We need to learn how to identify stuff, and like, I mean, this is a lifetime's worth of study identifying all of these things: healthy soils, healthy habitats, healthy crops, healthy plants, healthy animal. All plant species, all animal species, and all fungi species. The reality is, you should be able to identify the three things on the left. The three on the right, what I find, so I've been a grower for 18 years. I identify these things when I need to. So if I have a new weed, I learn to identify it. I don't need to identify all the weeds because if I don't have them on my farm, there's not much use in identifying them. So if they become a problem, I identify them. animals, animal tracks, animal poo, stuff like that. I know most of it. If something new turns up, I then learn how to identify it. There's so much fungi everywhere. Even people who dedicate their life to studying fungi don't know all the fungi. Yeah. But we need to learn about identifying mildews. We need to be able to identify blight. So the ones that are both a good fungus, but I'd say the ones you really need to learn how to identify are the problematic fungi and molds. They're the ones, the different kinds of mildew you need to be able to identify because you manage them in different ways. We need to understand the life cycles and interactions with the seasons of different animals. And I've got four examples here. Okay. Deer. And I'll give you an example about deer. In the spring, so basically in the UK countryside, which most of it is grassland for all the livestock, um, most of that grassland gets grazed a bit, but most of it gets left untouched until the first hot weekend in May, when almost all of it gets cut for silage all the way across the country in the same weekend. In that long grass is where all the deer and their babies from earlier in the spring are hanging out. When that silage cut happens, and we don't tend to get deer damage early in the spring, as soon as that silage cut happens, all those deer and all their babies go running across the countryside trying to find somewhere new to hide because their hiding spot's just been removed. That is when we start getting deer damage. We know that. So things like lettuce in unprotected fields, unfenced or unrabbit fenced or no brick hedges, it's that weekend. We know when it's going to happen because we cut silage on the farm. We will crop mesh that lettuce patch that weekend to stop the deer damaging that lettuce. Pigeons. So pigeons are really, really thirsty this year. We're getting a lot of damage from pigeons. We've had to cover crops we've never had to cover before. Lettuce. Got a lot of problems on pigeons on lettuce this year. Pigeons don't drink water. They get their moisture from leaves. So that's why we've been getting a lot of problems this year. But pigeons, the minute combines start rolling on the farm or on the nearby farms, all the pigeons disappear and start eating the grain that's being spilled by combines. That for us is a trigger to take all the meshes off of our young brassicas and let all the insect predators get in there and start eating all the caterpillars. Badgers, well, we only really have one big problem with badgers, which is they absolutely love sweet corn. So basically, the minute my sweet corn is like within 4 or 5 days of harvest, and they have the same taste requirements as us, the day we decide to harvest is the night they decide to eat it all. So we put an electric fence around our sweet corn about 4 or 5 days before we're going to harvest it. And we know with mice and small mammals, we get a big pressure early in the spring because they're really, really hungry. Not much natural food about. Nature's seed is all rotted. By the end of the winter, all their stores have been eaten up. And then we get a lot of damage and a lot of attack on freshly grown seed at the end of the autumn, just before winter, we find that all the voles and all the rats and all the mice will go out and start harvesting seed from everywhere, including from our pepper plants, our chili plants, from everything, and start stashing it for winter. So we know if we're going to put out mouse traps and things like that, the key pressure times are early spring and late autumn. So understanding those pest life cycles is really, really important. And I talked about this already, but understanding pest predator interactions. Okay. So just quickly on this, like I said, the things we're looking at here, ladybirds, adults, they eat a reasonable amount of aphids. Their larvae eat unbelievably large amounts of aphids. Lacewing adults don't eat aphids. Their larvae eat aphids. Hoverflies don't eat aphids. It's their larvae that eat aphids. Parasitoid wasps will eat pollen if they can't find. Sorry, parasitoid wasp adults don't eat caterpillars. They eat pollen. It's the babies they lay inside caterpillars that kill the caterpillars and kill the aphids. So for all of these, having lots of pollen about is really, really important. The way the flying adult predators work is when a plant is being attacked by a caterpillar or being attacked by aphids, the plant releases a stress hormone. Most of these predators can smell that hormone from about 5 meters away. So they'll be flying over your Brussels sprout, say, they'll smell the stress hormone, they'll zoom in on the Brussels sprout plant, they'll see the caterpillars, or they'll see the aphids, and they'll go and lay their eggs right next to the aphids or in the caterpillars. Um, so it's really important. We need 5 meters isn't a long way. That's why these wildlife corridors are really important because it brings these adult populations right in amongst the crops. So forecasting again, this is a lot. This is about using insecticides, but I still think like crop mesh is really, really expensive. I don't have enough to cover everything all the time. So by knowing when the pigeons cause damage to young brassica plants, but also top left, knowing the flight times of carrot fly. So May, high risk period. September, high risk period. Middle of a really hot summer, not that high risk period. Like carrot fly doesn't really like really hot, dry conditions. So we can move the meshes around to where they're needed and be more tactical and own less mesh, spend less money if we can do that. So as far as understanding how weather patterns affects that, so knowing that blight is caused by really warm nights and high humidity will inform whether you want to be watering it or not at that certain time, because we don't want to boost humidity and provide the perfect conditions for blight. Bottom right, so AHDB no longer exists as that. So they used to do forecasts on all the different pests. It used to help me move my meshes around. Now NIAB does that forecasting. So you can look at their website as NIAB, and they will predict when there's going to be a carrot fly hatching around really accurate weather forecasting. So you can know when to move your meshes into certain places, when not, or when to drill carrots around those forecasts. Visual monitoring. So no matter how busy you are, you need to walk around at least, I'd say at least once a week and inspect all of your crops thoroughly for pest activity. Okay. You can't look, I've got 15 acres. I've got about a hectare of brassicas. I cannot look at every single plant in a hectare once a week. So what I do is I walk through the brassica area and I look, it's pattern recognition basically. I look at crop vigor, okay? And that top right photo of a Brussels sprout plant, that slight purple discoloration on that plant, for me, if I see that from a distance, I know that's aphids, okay? And I go in there, I'm not going to use any insecticides, but what I'm looking at is I'm seeing whether the predators are there. So I'm looking at whether there's parasitized aphids or whether there's hoverfly larvae. Normally for me, hoverfly larvae or lacewing larvae in the autumn on Brussels sprouts. And that's all I'm doing. I'm checking on my system. I'm evaluating that whether there's predators there. Be very careful of crop mesh. And the phrase there, out of sight, out of mind, applies to two things. In my experience, it's impossible to keep cabbage white butterflies out of brassicas with mesh. Unless you hermetically seal it around the edge, it just will not do that. What they'll do is they'll get underneath, and what that mesh is doing is keeping the predators away. And actually, for us, we find it makes more damage with caterpillars than if we take it off and we let the predators in. The other key one with that is weeds. You can walk past a crop mesh and go, oh, it doesn't look too bad. Then you take the crop mesh off the weed, you go, oh my God, the weeds are terrible. So when you're doing visual monitoring, it's always worth getting in underneath the mesh and having a good look at what's happening underneath that mesh. And then you need to know what you're monitoring for. You need to understand the evidence of pests. So you need to know what caterpillar poo looks like. You need to know your footprints of mammals, deer footprints, rabbit footprints, to a certain extent, badger footprints. You need to know what damage looks like. So why is my cabbage covered in holes? What's causing the holes? It could be flea beetle, it could be caterpillars, it could be slugs. And don't be afraid to pull up a plant. If you have 100 aubergine plants and they're starting to look a bit sick, go up to the sickest looking plant and pull it out the ground and see what's going underground with its roots. The example there is white rot on garlic. Lots of the problems we have are underground. We need, if you've got 100 plants, pulling one of them out to check out the roots. It's not a big deal. It's not a lot of money you've lost, but it'll inform your what you're going to do about the problem really, really well. You've got physical monitoring. So pit traps is a good way of monitoring beetle populations. Digging soil pits is really good for soil health monitoring. If you're worried about wireworm, the in the summer beforehand or in the autumn beforehand, go and bury potatoes in that field. And especially in the autumn, that will tell you whether there's loads of wireworm there because they'll go straight for the potatoes. And that won't deal with the wireworm, but it might inform you about what crops you're going to plant in that field the following spring. And then trap crops. I don't do a lot of this. This is more chemical farmers do this a bit more, but they'll plant a lot of things like mustard or rocket around the outside of other crops, and that is around the other outside of other brassica crops, and that will help them to monitor when there's brassica pests entering the field. Chemical monitoring. So pheromone traps is very useful in fruit trees. It's quite useful for allium minor and leek moth. It can tell you when you need to get your meshes onto those crops. Soil testing is a form of chemical monitoring, and that'll help you with soil health assessment. If you've got an unknown problem affecting loads of your high value glasshouse or polytunnel crops, leaf sampling can be a good technique for nutrient deficiency or for disease, things like verticillium wilt or I can't remember all the pests. Soil-borne diseases like sclerotinia, things like that. It is very, very expensive. Quite often when your plants are ill, it might just be to do with pH. So pH has got too high or too low. So constant pH monitoring is an important chemical monitoring skill. So having done all that, you need to make decisions based on monitoring and damage thresholds. So still always remember patience and tolerance. If you see a few pests, don't panic. Wait for the predators to turn up. Your crop needs to be a habitat. Damage thresholds are very specific to routes to market. Understand how damage will progress and then act accordingly. Sometimes the damage isn't commercially damaging, so you can just let the predator interaction go through its cycle. Sometimes you know when you see something, you've got to act straight away, and you'll just learn that over time as a grower. Having a route to market for grade out is a key part of this whole philosophy. Have a plan for interventions. Prevention is better than cure, but you need to know what you're going to do if slugs get like commercially damaging. What are you going to do about it? Spider mite. Um, After a while, on a holding, spider mite becomes endemic. You need to have a plan based about what you're going to do about spider mite. But that needs to be part of your crop plan. You shouldn't be reacting. As soon as you see something, you should know exactly what you're going to do when you see it. Like I say it again, patience and tolerance is really, really important. Don't freak out when you see a pest. Wait a little bit and then identify whether the predators have turned up. Damage thresholds very specific to route to market. Getting a little bit of flea beetle damage on the tops of your radish is not a big issue. You can cut the tops off and sell them as radishes. If it's your rocket crop, it'll make it unsellable. Okay, so that's a key understanding the different effects of the same pest on different crops. Potato scab. I wish they hadn't called it potato scab because it sounds horrific. And when your customers say, "What's those markings on the potato?" and you have to say that's potato scab, they won't buy the potato. What you'll find is I've got very rich, self-indulgent customers. Everything's got to be perfect. We compete with Waitrose in town. So for me, potato scab's a big issue. So we do a lot of proactive irrigation to stop potato scab. Those carrots bottom left, I couldn't sell any of those carrots to my customer base. But when I used to work at a CSA, that potato top right, I could sell that to my customers with a bit of education. And I reckon one, two, three, four out of five of those carrots I could have sold to a CSA customer base, maybe not bottom left. And I'm going to talk about the carrot seedlings next slide. So understanding how damage will progress and act accordingly. A little bit of aphids turning up. We get this every year on cucumbers. A little bit of aphids turning up on cucumbers. We wait and we watch and we see if the predators turn up. If they don't turn up within like a week, I'll go around and just squirt the tops of my cucumbers with a high pressure hose and just blast the aphids off, and they tend to grow through it. But that's if I don't see the predators turn up. Top right, that's spider mite. On our farm here, we've been going for 28 years. Polytunnels. Glass house is 6 years old, but it's secondhand from the Netherlands. It came with spider mite in the metal frame, basically. So what we do is we release. It's the only biocontrol we use. Basically, the spider mite are endemic here, so we get them every single year. They're way worse in the hot years. So in a hot year, I will reduce Phytosulus persimilis, a bought-in biocontrol. I'll release it at the beginning of June, the beginning of July, and the beginning of August. That's part of my crop plan. Carrot seedlings, bottom left. It's not a well-known fact, but slugs can't swim and they drown. They love water, but they drown. If we get a biblical rainstorm and the soil becomes completely saturated at the same time as I've just drilled my main crop carrots and they're at this size, that for me is a commercially damaging weather event. And I know that that will force all the slugs to the surface and they'll wipe out all of my carrot seedlings. So basically, that is one of the times where I'll make a slug pellet intervention and I will go and slug pellet my main crop carrot seedlings at that point because I know that if I don't, I'll lose a commercially damaging amount of those seedlings. Cabbage white caterpillars on brassicas. We have such good predator populations here that basically what we see is in about August, a lot of our brassicas are covered in caterpillars. By the end of September, there's no caterpillars anywhere. They've all been parasitized or eaten by songbirds. And although we get a bit of leaf damage on our brassicas, the leaf damage you get in August is so often not the crop you're going to be selling in the autumn and the winter. And it's essentially early leaves or outer leaves of cabbage that are never part of the end product. So we just monitor that. And as long as I see stuff starting to get parasitized, I just leave it to it. So that's a situation and understanding of a life cycle where I know I don't need to make an intervention. Route to market for grade out, key part of the system. So, like I said, here we compete with Waitrose in town. So we have to, our customer base, if they don't shop here, they will go and buy their organic produce from Waitrose. Um, we we get we have to go grade A. Like essentially our grading has to be as good as Waitrose. So we get a fair bit of grade out. Um, my wife makes beautiful yogurt on the farm. So that's the yogurt she makes. Soft fruit is very prone to weather damage, very prone to insect damage, disease damage. The big one's rain. If we get 2 or 3 weeks of rain, the strawberries go mushy, the black currants don't look great, the raspberries don't look great. What we do is we still harvest that damaged fruit. We put it in the freezer and then all the way through the winter, my wife turns that grade B soft fruit into beautiful fruit yogurt that we sell to the customers. And we make just as much value off of that as we do off grade A soft fruit. We have a cafe on the farm, and that's really important for our grade out produce. A spinach leaf with loads of holes in it going into an omelette makes me more money than a grade A spinach leaf because it's value added produce. We also make loads of ready meals that we sell in the shop. So lots of damaged root veg, damaged potatoes, they all go into our ready meals. So that route to market for grade B produce is a really important part of the system. We're organic growers. We're going to get, especially if you've got high, like really demanding customer base. Quite often, sell organic veg. You've got to be in an affluent area. Affluent people are fussy. So you've got to keep the grading high. So having that grade out's really, route to market for grade out's really important. Like I said, you need to have a plan for interventions. Okay. So know what interventions are available, know when and where you're going to use them, know what your organic options are. And I'm not going to go through all of them because there's so many, but if you're interested, ask me in the question period. Um, but yeah, have them ready, know where you're going to get them, order them in good time, have enough mesh to use when you need it, have good enough irrigation to keep your crops vigorous, know where you're going to get your biocontrols, know how long it's going to take them to arrive. Physical interventions. So, weeding or hoeing ground, even when there's no weeds, is a really good way of dealing with slugs. A slug slime trail is just a homing device. So if there's slime trails are everywhere and it's a bit of a damp, early in the spring on polytunnel lettuce, a quick hoe around your lettuces slows down the ability of the slugs to find that same lettuce and carry on eating. Really good irrigation is crucial for vigorous, healthy crops. Meshes are a physical intervention, good for keeping pigeons off brassicas, really important. The one thing we cannot get predators to deal with is carrot fly. So meshes is our physical intervention for carrot fly. Broad beans, after 4 or 5 flower trusses have set, snap the top off. That's where the ants bring the aphids out and put them on the top of the plant. Essentially, ants farm aphids. It's fascinating, but I don't got time for that now. But they will bring aphids out from underground and put them on the top of your broad bean plants. Snap off that really soft, tender top, and that'll stop you getting black fly on your broad beans. Biological intervention. So you've got biological controls. Compost teas are really good for soil health or for stressed plants. We use buckwheat on this farm to deal with couch grass. And something we use a lot of is garlic spray. We use that for mildews. We can use it if we've got real bad aphid problems and the predators aren't turning up. We often use garlic spray. But the main thing we use garlic spray for is mildew prevention. Really, really effective. Chemical interventions, well, we don't use any because we're organic, and none of you should either because they're bad for the planet Earth and they're bad for people. The one thing I count as a chemical intervention that I use occasionally, although it's allowed under organic, I still see it as a negative part of my system, is slug pellets. I talked about when I would use that. Mainly, it's very young carrot seedlings in torrential flooding rain. So we're getting towards the end here. Can't bang on time. I've never done that before in my life. Okay, so reducing interventions, they need to be well planned, and you always need to modify each year about when you use them, what you're using them, and build that into your crop plan for the next year. Timing is everything. An intervention slightly late, so like I said, a preemptive garlic spray will keep we garlic spray all of our bunch beetroot when it's in the prop tunnel as plug plants, and that makes them beautiful. We used to do it when we got mildew, downy mildew in a tunnel, and that was too late, and we lost leaf quality. Now we do it in the prop tunnel before we plant them out. So that is we've reduced that intervention by making it a well-timed intervention, well-targeted intervention. So irrigation is really important. Like, yeah, well-targeted, targeted at the crop at the right time. And then monitoring, the only way you can reduce your interventions is monitoring the impact of those interventions, basically. That shot bottom right, that's where we've used buckwheat to deal with couch grass, and the control was just doing what's called a bastard fallow, which is just repetitively cultivating. And we followed both of those, the repetitive cultivation and the buckwheat, with a Phacelia crop. And the repetitive cultivation, which where it says fallow, damaged the soil structure so much that that's how much Phacelia germinated. And the buckwheat, which it didn't damage soil structure, it enhanced soil structure. That's what the Phacelia looked afterwards. So we were monitoring the impacts of those two interventions, and the buckwheat was a way better intervention. And then evaluation. So you need to evaluate your system over a long time period, not just like in the middle of the growing season, not even one season to another season, like a rotation. You need to be evaluating that over a five, however long your rotation is. You need to evaluate over the whole length of the rotation. The key indicator of a good holistic system is resilience. You know, you'll have problem years and good years. You'll have bad aphid times and good aphid times. But essentially, you're looking to use a Boris Johnson term. Can't believe I'm doing this. We're looking to squash the curve. So we don't want good year, good year, bad year. We want slightly better year, slightly worse year, slightly better year, slightly worse year. We want that resilience over a long time period. Um, and I can't emphasize enough, okay? And we should know this as organic growers. Welcoming biodiversity onto your land is not a charitable activity for biodiversity. It's a really powerful competitive technique and tool to be a sustainable farmer. And overall, what we should be looking at if we're evaluating a system is the health of the whole farm ecosystem. both the cropping areas, but how much biodiversity you're seeing in your hedges, in your woodlands, in your back garden, down the track on the way to the farm. If you're getting it right, you'll see an increase in biodiversity everywhere, basically. And that is me finished. So thank you very much.
Amazing, Andy. Thank you. Have a
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
have a drink.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a drink.
That's really amazing. Thank you. Even though every time I listen to you, even though I'm like, oh, I've heard Andy's chats about NPM before, and I'm still like, oh yeah, I just write this thing down here. I didn't like the picture of deer. I had deer in the polytunnels yesterday,
Oh, it's not good.
nibbling the top
That's a
of
lot of
the
damage in
beetle.
a short amount of time, isn't it?
Yeah, they're very cheeky. But yeah, that was amazing. Thank you very much.
Cool.
I don't want to take up other people's time if they've got questions. So does anyone have a question? Otherwise, I'm happy to bombard Andy with some of my own questions and be self.
Also, can I just prompt Kate? Like, I deliberately haven't gone very into like specific pests. It's like a holistic approach. But please, now in this question time, if you on your holdings or you're interested in really specific pest problems or
Mm,
mold problems or disease problems, please, now's the time to ask, and I'll go into a bit more detail about that.
yeah, definitely. So go on, Bronwyn. I think you got your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for the talk. That was really, really interesting.
Cool.
I guess my question is sort of on flea beetle.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about taking nets off when the pigeons are gonna go off and eat the seed, but now all the flea beetles here. And so it feels like they have to keep being covered and then it's out of sight, out of mind. And yeah, I don't know how you work around that.
What are you? So, are we talking like sort of main crop brassica stuff, kales, Brussels sprouts?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so like so one is you've got to have good irrigation. You've
Okay.
got to have good irrigation, but and the key thing there, and these things interact, and that is, I mean, honestly, it's amazing. I've had kale crops within like a centimeter of their life, absolutely decimated by flea beetle. And I suppose I talk about learning knowing when to give up and not give up.
Okay.
Kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, never give up with flea beetle. Keep watering them, keep weeding them. Like honestly, it's amazing what they'll come back from and give you an amazing commercial harvest. Um, Not 100% of the time, and like this, I have to say, this is a pretty last year and this year is the worst flea beetle I've seen. Um, but the way we deal with it, but on the other hand, we even with fleece, we tried to grow rocket into the summer for the first time this year. We gave up after the third drilling. Absolutely no point at all.
Yeah.
But with long season, what I'd call tough brassicas, just keep at it, keep weeding them, keep watering them. They do often pull through, even when you think they haven't got a chance.
Thank you.
I noticed I was weeding squash yesterday and I was like, what's that on my hands? And my hands were covered in flea beetle.
Yeah,
Like in the squash. They weren't harming the squash, but it was just in the hot soil. It's yeah, they love it hot and dry.
yeah.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Does anyone else have a question? I know I like the picture of your parasitic wasp. I've seen so many parasitic wasps in our prop tunnels this year. And it was really exciting. I was like, I think that's parasitic wasp. And then I've just seen loads and loads now. So I'm really blasé about it, going, yeah, there's loads of them around.
Definitely not scarrier fly.
No, they're like really
Cool.
long,
Oh,
really, really
nice, cool.
long,
Yeah.
really long, and with yellow stripes. I'm not sure exactly what kind they are. I'm hoping there's something
Oh,
useful.
brachioid, that's brachioid wasps. They're yeah, really cool. They're real voracious eaters. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, we've deliberately done some extra plantings to try and sort out allium leaf miner, which is a really big problem for us, even with mesh. So I'm hoping that they do something.
we're the same. We've stopped cropping leeks in the crop plan now doesn't involve cropping leeks in October,
Mm,
early November. We just
yeah,
skipped out. We
yeah,
just did it. We done double meshing. We done meshing the bare root leeks.
yeah,
Sometimes you just got to work around it. And I
Yeah.
know people want leeks all the way through the winter, but we do them now from like mid-August through to April, but we just skip out this month and a half. It was a
Yeah.
disproportionate amount of effort,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get just tons and tons in September.
Yeah.
Yay. And then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think the smell of harvesting and cleaning them just seems to attract that generation in, so then they're a
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone else any more if you do have a question, you can either put your hand up or just jump in and interrupt me.
Hello, I'll jump in.
Yeah, I'm Kirsty.
I'm growing in a couple of acres of glass house. Um, I'm only part-time and it's a really long-standing project, but the way that it's been managed means that the weed burden is like astronomical. So it feels pointless direct sowing anything. The
Mm,
other person who helps me grow sometimes, or the guy in charge, he still direct sows stuff. But whenever I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's just so much work.
yeah.
And the economics of it for me just doesn't make sense. So we've had a chat and I've chatted to him about cover crops. And his approach is that the weeds are the cover crop. So but I'm not too sure how to get it back into some sort of relative control, uh, so that everybody's happy within that system and that more money is being made because it's financially not working out. So any
Mm.
wisdom you've got for that?
Well, luckily, I'm showing the exact same situation as you at the moment. That we have a real weed burden in all of our in all of our protected cropping. So interestingly, we've been going through this thought process for a couple of years. And then, really interestingly, our weed burden got bad when we stopped undersowing in protected cropping.
Yeah,
And what we find is undersowing crops like tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, courgettes, all this stuff actually really helps. We kind of got into this mindset. It's like, well, if we don't undersow, we can weed better.
Mm.
But actually, it's back to that thing that a lot of the weeds, like nature, doesn't like bare ground. So the more we weed, the more the weeds got worse. Um, and we're just trying to go back in. We've actually held off this year because of the heat
Mm.
and trying to germinate them. But what we were meant to be doing is just go back into a real full undersowing thing. You already know what you should do. Stop direct sowing.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I'll
yeah,
give you a really good example. Rocket. Okay, we always used to direct sow rocket loads, and we still do a little bit for the winter, like in autumn when we got a long run in. But
Mm.
for early and very late crops of rocket in the glass house, we now do it all in blocks. And we're getting
Mm.
so much better. Like the crop is so much better. We get to
yeah,
do a few weed strikes before we plant it. We can weed in between it. We kind of do it on 15 centimeter. We do like multi-sown rocket blocks. And we do it at 15 centimeter spacings, quite tight row width. So we do like 4 rows on an 80 centimeter bed, but we can get a hoe up and down everything, but in
hmm
between the plants. And when we were direct sowing it, we get one really nice cut out of it, really clean. But then the second was just like we're spending so much time trying to get the chickweed out of it, and the harvest time was just so slow that I think there are a lot of things like if you've got a high slug burden, if you're low labour, if you've got a big weed burden,
Mm.
I think going for block sowing or plug sowing can be really, really helpful. Maybe not all year round, but like at the challenging times of year,
Mm.
hungry gap when you need stuff quick and you need it to work, you
Mm.
can rocket or rocket germinates quite early in the year, but it grows slow and the weeds can grow faster. So
yeah.
if you rear it for 4 weeks in a propagation tunnel and plant it out, it's much bigger and much bigger. So it outcompetes the weeds way quicker, and you get cash in the bank way quicker.
hmm I think there's a hesitation for using for undersowing. I think again they would see the weeds as the undersow, but I'm like, but you can't control that because it's all going to seed at different times, and
Yeah.
it's it feels very unmanageable.
We find the undersowing
And then
suppresses weed growth.
Mm.
yeah, but his argument would be, well, the weeds are the cover crop, the weeds are the
Mm.
that's just his philosophy. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, each to their own. But like funnily enough, my assistant grower is the same as your grower. And I got on with his system for a couple of years. And now I'm like putting my foot down. I was like, no, we're going back to
Mm.
undersowing. Because then we just go and it makes it a more regulated system. We go
yeah,
in there, we mow it every 3 or 4 weeks. That becomes this regular weed thing.
Mm.
And it stops. The key thing for us is it stops because we're doing it to manage the cover crop. It stops any of those weeds going to seed.
yeah,
And
Mm.
that's where we got a bit out of control was we got some new scary weeds like this sedge with a
Mm.
really prolific seeder.
Mm.
And by not dominating it with undersowing, it's got a little bit out of control.
Mm.
How would you? So I tend to black my pecs over the sort of old crop and let the old crop rot in situ. I'm just wondering how. So that tries to stay there for about 6 weeks before clearing it. Um, what would be a way of getting the weeds to germinate and manage it, and so that the next.
So if we can, it is like almost try and grow the weeds like a crop, water them, like actively grow them. So
Mhm.
it's stale seed bedding or full seed bedding is what it's called.
And
And
then putting the black plastic down again after
well,
they.
we personally, I mean, it depends what system you run. And, I know a lot of people run no dig systems these days, but we run a shallow cut, like a min till system inside. So what we would do is either, depending on what the weeds were, if it's perennial weeds, we'd cultivate. If it's annual weeds, we'd flame them off,
Yeah, it won't
basically.
let me have a flame either.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
Yes.
depends on the area. A wheel hoe would do it,
yeah,
but black plastic works. We're keen. We don't like having empty beds. It's so valuable protected cropping. We try and turn over and get. In fact, we do a lot of relay cropping these days where we don't have empty beds.
uh-huh.
And if I'm 100% self-critical, that never having empty beds and relaying cash crops all the time is
Hmm.
Mm.
also something that's slightly led to our weed burden going up. And
Mm.
now we're working in a little bit of time in the rotation inside to actually do what we're talking about, which is to have a 6 to 8 week period where we do proactively manage the weeds at some point. You have two different rotations, one in the glass house, one in the polytunnels. But yeah, I would weeds can get out of control in protected cropping really quick,
Mm.
as you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's right.
It was I always once I pulled my leek transplants out, I sow Persian clover, but I couldn't get Persian clover this year, so I've gone for Berseem clover, which is supposed to be tender clover. And I'll just broadcast that and we'll hoe it in and grow it over the summer and then mow it down with everything, mowing down everything for its seeds and then turn it in for autumn planting. So it's only a very small break. Like Andy says, I think all growers are kind of like, oh, but protected cropping is so valuable. We can't just leave it for 6 months of the year or whatever. But
We
yeah, I
find
think,
the two where the weeds get out of control for us, and it's just
yeah,
was it once is a mistake, twice is stupidity. But I've done it about 10 times now.
yeah,
One is bare root leaks.
yeah,
We find like you're just like I'm not going to weed them again. We're about to plant them, and then they go to seed.
yeah.
We have like a bit of sow thistle in there. What is
Mm,
it that goes to seed? And then the other one is early bunched carrots in the polytunnel.
mm,
We Because we mesh them because it's carrot fly time of year. It's what I
mm,
said, like out of sight, out of mind. We hand weed them once. We probably ridge them and hoe them maybe once or twice, and then it's the same thing. It's when it's like, oh, but the crop's great. The cash crop's great.
yeah,
And then you're like, as you harvest through a whole tunnel of carrots, you're like, oh God, all the weeds have gone to seed.
yeah,
And that's like to be self-critical is something we got to get way better at is not letting that happen.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Thank you, Kirsty. Were there any more questions or thoughts? Don't have to be a question, can be tell us your most exciting pest on the farm currently. Mine's deer, bloody deer. And the sun.
Yeah, that's the biggest pest at the moment.
No, that's cool. Okay, cool. Well, I think it's been a long, hot day, so we
Yeah.
should probably let you go and get a bit of rest, Andy. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'll share that round to people, and the recording will also be available when we upload it to our YouTube channel. I'll share the link to everybody so you
I'll
can.
send you a copy of the PowerPoint as well, Kate. You can share that with
Cool.
everyone. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Andy.
Cool.
That's great. Yeah, and then if you see Andy at any events anywhere, just say hi, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And good luck with the rest of your seasons, everyone. Let's I hope you get some rain and some shade soon. And
Yeah.
yeah.
10-day forecast. It's always just out of reach. Just the thunderstorms coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always next year as well.
That was hopefully El Nino year. Woo! Okay, thank you all, everybody. That's it for tonight then. We will see you soon and let us know if you've got any questions. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
you.
Presentation.
later.
Very interesting. Thanks, Andy.
Take care, guys. Happy growing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.